it down to the arena. We have these brand new players, not necessarily Michael Fang and Jake Warburton. We just saw that match. These players both playing Lexi. And there's a couple of very key differences to their lists. A lot of very similar, very powerful cards across the board, but one of those key differences is represented actually here on the field, on the arena, in the choice of Quiver. We see Quiver of Rustling Leaves on the left there, and the Quiver of the Abyssal Depths on the right.
Yeah, the Quiver's a new addition to the game, as Brian Gottlieb had mentioned. Everybody has concerns about power creep. He said, one of the more sneaky types of power creep is just introducing a free piece of equipment to the class. In this case, Rustling Leaves is just another way to load an arrow potentially, whereas Quiver of Abyssal Depths is kind of almost like a built-in remembrance to a degree to recycle some of those important arrows. We're starting off by loading up that Voltaire with one of the bigger threats that Ranger can toss out your way. It is Endless Arrow, and in this case, Jake Warburton, not messing around, said, you know what, we're going to start the game next turn on a 6-card hand.
Well, I believe that's Max Klein there on the right.
Sorry.
And Andrew trying to decide whether or not to load in response, because you do technically have that capability of activating Voltaire before your opponent draws up so that you can play your own maybe expanded card hand, but instead just going to pass it on over, and it could be indicative of, card composition in hand. Looks like there is a Command and Conquer in the hand, but starting off, loading up that Drill Shot, most likely 4 with Go Again.
Drill Shot not as threatening against Rangers as it is, let's say, against Guardians, against Warriors, anything that's really packing a fridge in order to sort of absorb some of that damage, but still, 4 on hit is nasty, and it can go ahead and, if it does connect, perhaps just go ahead and drop one of those -1 counters on the New Horizon. New Horizon late game does become relevant, and you're mentioning Command and Conquer. I've played a lot of Lexi in the past few months, and what I found is that Command and Conquer, honestly, it seems like the perfect remedy for a hero that rocks 2 cards in the arsenal, but in all honesty, it is not as devastating as you may think, because oftentimes the Lexi player will be content to just take the damage, maybe blow up a card in arsenal, and say, I still got 4 cards in hand, and I could still load and fire a couple of arrows and make it dangerous. So we're going to see the respect on either side of the Command and Conquers.
Oh, the other thought you can have when staring down a Command and Conquer is you can say, okay, well, if I have a 4-card hand and a 2-card arsenal, I can almost play like a pseudo chain where my hand becomes my resources. I can give 2 of those cards away, use the other 2 as resources to fuel the 2 cards in arsenal to some degree. And, as long as I can find a way to give Go Again or maybe Snapdragon Scalers, I can still have a very powerful turn in my own right.
Right now, Endless Arrow is loaded up for Max Klein. So Andrew knows that that's probably going to be the bookend of a 3-piece suit that Lexi might fire Andrew's way, as both players are just, again, marking down, just taking stock of what's occurring over here, as the first order of business looks like a -1 counter, because the Drill Shot did connect. Now, when there's always a decision to be made, where do you want to put the -1 counter? I opt to actually not put it on the tunic. I put it on the other equipment because I want to incentivize my opponent to perhaps donate the tunic to cover a breakpoint. If you put the -1 counter on the tunic, there's really no incentive to ever donate that piece of equipment, so the tunic is always there. Sometimes I like to eliminate everything else to say, if you got to give me equipment, it's got to be that valuable piece.
Oh, I can definitely see that. And the Command and Conquer played out, and there's the 2-card block from hand, throwing those down, and then a simple arsenal and pass from here. The single block there can be impactful, though, as you mentioned, on one of those breakpoints, and in the very late game, when you really do need an extra block on that equipment after you've donated the New Horizon, and when you're just trying to stop some sort of on-hit. With this deck now, there are definitely on-hits you need to be aware of. That could provide, a very pivotal moment at the end of this game for Andrew.
Still in the very early stages here. 6-card hands are going to be the order now. The main damage, those big-time turns, the impact turns, are going to be oftentimes off the back of, let's say, 3-of-a-kinds and such. Now, when we're talking about value plays and those big, impactful cards, we'll see later as the game progresses, players like to go ahead and dig through your opponent's graveyard to see what's left, what has been played. A lot of times, what you're looking for is like, hey, how many 3-of-a-kinds have been played? How many Rain Razors have been played? How many, how many Codexes have I seen?
Yes.
Those major impact cards, and you want to take stock of those. But here is an Endless Arrow, a very dangerous card if it's left unchecked. This is one of those arrows that definitely commands some respect.
Yeah, I think there's certainly a reduction, perhaps is the best way to say it, a reduction of this matchup to, okay, it's the mirror. Literally, whoever draws more, perhaps Codex of Frailties, might just be the victor in this one. And in some cases, that may just be how it plays out. But I think there's a lot of nuance here as well to what you're drawing, what you've put in the graveyard, what you can access via that, and what you're giving your opponent as well. So it's not necessarily always going to be that really cookie cutter, though that is definitely one of the more powerful cards. And another one that is both very, two cards that are contentious. The inclusion of Art of War, or not, in Lexi lists. And we see Andrew actually does include Art of War, so he can perhaps go even wider on certain turns or even taller. And Maximilian including 3 copies of Codex of Inertia, a card that is very powerful in the mirror in some respects, and some people swear by it. And I personally very much like the card in the matchup as well.
Yeah, definitely a point of debate. Art of War, I'm a fan of it. Absolutely a fan of it. Been playing it. Codex of Inertia was a late addition to playtesting with Lexi, late into the process here. However, Art of War was always on the menu and never came off. It's a very powerful card from the second set, your favorite set, actually.
Arcane Rising?
Arcane Rising, exactly. It's a staple card that sees play in so many different lists. It is an aggressive engine, and here we have a 7-point arrow, again, still on the stack, and Andrew has to decide, how valuable is his own hand. Can he send it back? This is a 7-point arrow, and I do believe it's going to go ahead and grab that. He's going to go ahead and put that Snapdragon Scalers. Now, this was played out of Arsenal. It wasn't loaded with the bow, so keep in mind there are still potentially 2 more bow activations if necessary, but with 2 cards in hand, I think that there's just going to be one follow-up after this.
Yeah, Snapdragon Scalers here going to allow you to continue this turn effectively. Now, it's an interesting early use of Snapdragon Scalers on potentially an awkward series where you basically had to donate a few cards and trying to cobble together extra damage. And there's a card, by the way, that we have seen very popular in lists and hugely supported all the way through Lexi's life. That's a Winter's Bite pitched there, but coming in again with the Endless Arrow and threatening 4 extra damage here, but an early use of the Snapdragon Scalers. We may see that come up a little bit later on perhaps those more greasy, awkward hands as well.
Yeah, this one's going to be 4 go again. So again, the fact that that first arrow hit, it becomes a headache that just is sustained over time, mainly because if you need to respect the first endless arrow. And there's the go again off of it. Again, thank you so much, Mr. Klein, as 4 go again. And Andrew saying, man, deja vu all over again, as I didn't respect the first one. Now, 7 is a tall order, but what Andrew's wondering here, with a card in arsenal and 4 in hand, he might be doing a little bit of math here, saying, okay, 4 off this, he might load it again with the +1. Am I happy or okay to take 9 if I start sending it back? You're doing that give and take math to see if it's worth trading damage. He did let the first one go, but this one is a lot easier to block.
Yeah, this can also come down very much to a race scenario. Both of these heroes, obviously Lexi is just very powerful at pushing lots of damage and in wide-ranging ways. And so he just may be looking at this. Andrew might be thinking to himself, okay, if I commit 2 cards to block here and I'm playing effectively a 2-card plus arsenal hand, can I win this turn cycle? Is this even something that I want to entertain? Or can I just push the same amount of damage and continue to bleed our life totals into that end game where I perhaps feel more comfortable? And he's not going to block here. He's going to keep his hand.
Well, a second activation of the bow, and Max is saying, all right, how about a third? Let's go. Why not? Are we going to do it again? It looks like it, as the Endless Arrow makes a 3rd appearance. And like you mentioned yesterday, that drew me into a small fit of rage. Somehow Endless Arrow has returned.
It has indeed.
Hate love you.
By the way, I just want to comment on the beautiful Ponder token there, little Ponder token altar that's sitting there, thanks to the Premeditate that connected earlier.
All right, so the reason why this right here is getting go again is because this is an opportunity where Maximilian is saying, Andrew's given me the green light. He's given me clearance to land. If I can get a go again off of this arrow, there's a possibility here where this might be a bullseye bracer's turn. He might reload this and fire it again because Andrew has given him absolutely no indication that he is going to respect this
And
attack.
there it is.
There's the bullseyes and the rain raisins on top of it. This is a 6 spot, so look at the amount of damage that Max has pushed through, loading it with the bow +1. It is a 7-point arrow. Now,
no, he's actually loading it with that bullseye bracer.
Bullseyes
like you
+1,
mentioned,
you're
so
right.
that's getting the +1 there. Now, interestingly enough, he chose not to play the rain razors earlier in the turn on the first fire. Maybe asking for blocks early and then not getting them. You could have gotten extra value off of the rain razors, but that might have incentivized earlier blocking, and you could just, from Maximilian's side of things, just say, hey, I want to push, damage after damage after damage. I'm going to seem like this is an innocuous, awkward turn, and instead, I'm going to absolutely jam this endless arrow over and over and push massive damage. And now, Andrew on the back foot and a huge life deficit with a 5-card hand, technically. But can you swing that much in one chunk to try and keep life parity?
When was the last time you attacked with the same card 4 times? It's incredible, but in all the playtesting that I've done with Lexi over the past several weeks, I have found that when you're given that green light, when you're given a lane, you basically say, all right, let's just go for it. We're going to rain raisins. We're going to go ahead and hit the bracers when we can. We're going to load up that arrow. We're going to fire it. Again, there's absolutely no friction that Andrew's presenting here. No defense. So you've got to take that opportunity to connect for as much damage as possible. Maximilian here has taken that opportunity and converted in stride as he has brought Andrew down to 19.
Now, here's a possible way to really slow the game down in some respects is off of the back of something like a frost lock, giving frost bites, having a bit of disruption that might be able to allow you to create some space and some tempo back in your direction, and an arrow with an on hit in the form of infecting shot, which could create a blood rot pox token for your opponent, threaten some extra damage over the top. That plus the frostbite might give pause to Max and say, okay, maybe I just slow down, I pay for the frostbite, maybe fire something, but also then just choose to pay for the blood rot and not take extra damage.
Such a different landscape of this Ranger versus what we saw with Azalea. This is a 5 attack. Same kind of arrow. It's still an infecting shot, but it's not 12. It's not dominated. But you know that this is just the opening salvo, as this infecting shot does come with a little bit of bad news if it does connect, as it will create a blood rot pox token on the opposite side here. Maximilian, though, does have some cushion. So if Andrew wants to be pushing, he can definitely, decide that Max can just go ahead and take it if Max likes his hand. But donating 2 arrows to the cause here, looks like Max is opting to say, hey, I put my work in last time. I could maybe take a turn off here, maybe do a little bit of blocking and preserve that life total.
Yeah, well, but here's the possible punish on that strategy, because if he's going to donate the entirety of his hand, he could stop this attack from going through, but he would be left completely turnless, and he's just going to take this damage. Now, the question becomes, on Andrew's side, do you consider popping and trying to push extra damage? But I don't think, he is actually going to do it. He's going to pop and load up and send this arrow for 5.
When you're looking to use that bullseye bracers, oftentimes the most common target is going to be something like Endless Arrow to sort of close out a chain. I've seen players even open turns by loading a Bolton shot with it to give it a go again.
Exactly.
If you're sort of, you might be screwed for resources perhaps.
Or if you draw into a hand with no pumps, you can give the pump via the bullseye bracers for the Bolton shot to start your turn off. Definitely. Yeah.
Absolutely. So both players, like I said earlier, just finding the right opportunity, not being terribly greedy here with their equipment. As we saw, the Snapdragon Scalers on Max's side have already gone way of the dodo, and the bullseye bracers on both sides are now long gone. There's the first codex of the game.
Yes, and again, it comes down to who can find these codices, who can find the, Art of War's rain razors and that sort of thing to really push the damage, and this is going to be a big play and a big moment. Now, you're not forcing a card out of Andrew's hand by playing this, but you are able to go and get your own card and add that in. I believe he's throwing a Falcon Wing now.
Falcon Punch for 3, so it's not as devastating.
Such a good reference. Thank you so much for making that reference. That makes me so happy.
Well, and thank you so much for making the reference you made yesterday and making me so absolutely inside out enraged.
You're welcome.
4 attack, Endless Arrow. And we saw just how endless they can be.
Yes, we have from both sides, too. Both players know the power of the Endless Arrow, know the power of recursion, and know how to threaten. This is definitely a matchup that both are well-versed in, you can tell, and they're playing it out at a very high level, knowing when to take their lumps, when to block, when to try and save some damage, and how much they can push on the turn cycle.
Dear Lord, the amount of mileage on that Endless Arrow, it is due for an oil change, I would say, as honestly have been. All it's doing is just bouncing back. Maximilian has gotten a lot of work done with one arrow.
Well, they've probably gotten all their practice using the Endless Arrow over and over again by playing against all the Dromeyes in the field, because that is one of the key strategies, like small-scale strategies that you play out as Alexius. Try to recur Endless Arrow as much as possible to get rid of all those dragons. And here, they're just using it to smack each other in the face.
That is that's the professional scientific term.
Yeah, I had to look that up in the folder to see what the
what term did you
is
use?
at.
What term did you use earlier today?
I'm not sure.
I think it was a dossier.
Ah, yes.
The dossier.
I had to pull that up in the old dossier that we were given here. Here's the draw off the Ponder token, and we do get the choice here on what to arsenal. Deciding on arsenaling this card over the other card.
I feel like the Endless Arrow is usually the target there. It's a nice way to sort of close out a turn cycle. Also, when you flip the Endless Arrow, your opponent knows it's coming. It does change their blocking patterns because they oftentimes want to respect the Endless Arrow, which can give an open lane for the other arrows to connect through.
Yeah.
And if you're attacking, you're usually attacking. You're saying, all right, I'm going to attack with the stuff that I don't care if you block early, which is kind of feels like free damage. And if you close the chain with something like Endless Arrow, then that becomes an open lane for your other arrows to just get some free damage and some free work done. Right now, Maximilian at 27, Andrew at 12, but he's the one presenting the Chilling Ice Vein Fused.
Yeah, and both of these lists are largely fused lists, but Andrew's list definitely leans more into the ice than Max's. And here we see the exact, that playing out exactly, and Chilling Ice Vein Fused is going to maybe cause a little bit of a headache for Max to work his way through, especially if this turn continues like it might be with the Endless Arrow there sitting in Arsenal and obviously 2 cards in hand. And he's going to be able to use this to possibly push both extra damage and disruption.
Now, keep in mind, this Chilling Ice Vein is going to affect everything on the combat chain.
It does,
It's not just this arrow, so you have to be wary. It's not just about blocking out the Chilling Ice Vein. If it was that easy peasy, Stephen J. Armada, it would be a different story. But
exactly.
Everything that attacks is going to tax Maximilian, and that's a nasty... That's a nasty truth here because, again, breakpoints are the real deal here with 4, and that Endless Arrow looms large. Max knows that is going to be the bookend to this attack pattern here. But
and it might be tough because both of these are very heavy red-lined lists. It might make Maximilian's turn very tough because if he draws into a very red-heavy hand and there are 2 or 3 arrow attacks that are able to connect on this turn, most likely 2, that's going to give 2 frostbites and basically make you pitch away your hand just to come across with extra damage or your own damage on your own turn.
Ranger, traditionally, equipment-wise, very, very utility-oriented, very, helping the attack aspect, not necessarily equipped to block out damage, to cover up breakpoints, etc. So both players are going to have to be donating cards here in order to keep going. It looks like
that's a great response. Having a blue in hand, being able to most likely pay for any of the arrow on-hit effects that are now granted by Chilling Ice Vein. Because at this point, because it's been fused, anything that hits, you're going to have to pay 1 for. But you have the blue, which means you most likely have a turn in store. It looks like he might even have his own blue Winter Spite, so he may have a decent blue hand that can pay through some of these taxes here and push damage.
Well, it's not just that. I think I saw it might be. Was that an Arctic Incarceration in his hand?
It's possible. Both players are running Arctic Incarceration Red, of course, a popular card that can really do some work, particularly against heroes like Aggro Dromai and things like that. But,
certainly.
Arctic Incarceration, also something that you can tuck into the arsenal and, from time to time play out on awkward turn scenarios where you have to block just to try and swing back tempo.
Arctic Incarceration, oftentimes, if you're looking to block out this turn, there's always an opportunity where your follow-up is merely to just play an Arctic Incarceration, pass, and make it very uncomfortable for your opponent to pay through it.
Exactly.
If it's in Arsenal, a great play is just flip it,
Yep.
create a Frostbite, play it. So your next opponent's move is going to cost them 4 over the top here.
4 extra. Yeah, it's a fantastic little card for that. It has some clunky capabilities at times, but the ability for you to just commit to a blockout turn and having it in Arsenal and then, trying to swing back tempo, not by pushing damage, but by pushing disruption is quite great.
Right now it's Drill Shot for 3. Again, not necessarily the most imposing, but keep in mind it's going to tax 1 if it hits. It is going to go and drop another counter, potentially on the New Horizons. That's the ideal target, obviously, here. My record, by the way, 4 -1 counters on, I believe it was Snapdragon Scalers. There was nothing else. There was nothing else available, so I said, let's just go for it, baby.
You're just going to assert dominance by placing it on a card that can't necessarily block anyway.
Yeah, screw it.
At that point, if they somehow do just chuck the Snapdragon Scalers, your attack gets extra damage.
Absolutely.
I don't think that's how that works.
3 off the top here, and Max Klein looks like he's probably, I think he's just doing some, he's going to take it. He's going to go ahead and pay the tax again off of that initial Fused Chilling Ice Vein, a -1 counter on the New Horizons, and there it is. We've seen it once, twice, 3 times a lady.
Yep, this is the third attack that Endless Arrow coming from the Arsenal. This is the attack that finalizes the turn, essentially, as we've used our Voltaire load effects, and have also used our gloves to drop our arrow in already. Those bullseye bracers used up, so we're essentially face up here, outside of some random thing we might be missing. This is the end of the turn, but definitely maintained or pulled your opponent down to your life parity. Just fantastic for Andrew to be able to claw his way back into this one.
The Endless Arrow of the now extinct super rare rarity level.
That's true, yes.
Yep. So, yeah, hey, I love it. It's like a boomerang.
He's going to take the damage. He's going to pay that last resource for the Chilling Ice Vein. Oh, and he's going to end with a Winter's Bite. What a powerful way to finish things off. Going to make him pay the tax here on Winter's Bite via the Tunic resource, taking the Tunic resource and kind of robbing him of that capability there.
Effective way to do it. Now we're going to see I believe there is that red Arctic Incarceration, which can actually catch Andrew potentially with a bad hand. We'll see what he's got going on here. Max Klein did take a beating, but he did dish it out early, so the life totals are approaching parity here as Andrew did find a great turn off the back of a fused Aether Ice Vein, and in reality, the damage done, it did still peel a card out of Max just to pay for those taxes.
It's going to be dropping some arrows in via Voltaire and sending... I think we've talked about this card before.
What is this?
It's an Endless Arrow.
Oh, yeah.
It has a 4, and in this case, it has Go Again.
Super rare. Endless Arrow for Go Again. Any respect on this one? There it is, finally.
Yes, and here we're finally getting to the point in the life totals and in the point in this game where we're considering, dropping cards to block this Endless Arrow to get rid of it so that we can move, past it and hopefully get past some of this recursive damage that keeps coming at us. Still has to deal with the Searing Shot that's sitting in the arsenal. That's going to be coming next. Searing Shot going to be able to push extra damage over the top. It is a fantastic breakpoint arrow. Costs nothing to play. If it does hit, it makes your opponent lose a life. So it essentially, if you're thinking about this, this is like a 0 for 5 arrow. And attacking that breakpoint naturally means that you're already incentivized to just let it through. But are you? Because it's going to be 5 damage instead of 4.
It's such a happy little arrow. It does so much work. It's so unassuming. Again, if it hits, you just lose 1 life, right? It's not a +1. It's nothing like that. It's merely, hey, just shave 1 extra off the top.
For those historians, back in the day, that actually was the first arrow ever spoiled in the game of Flesh and Blood. Searing Shot was the first arrow ever spoiled.
Who spoiled it?
I did. I spoiled that arrow.
Was it?
It was me.
Okay. Well, there's the Arctic Incarceration, dropping 3 Frostbites down on Andrew's side of the board. So the first thing he's going to do is have to, hey, pay over the top on this. A great card, again, in red. Oftentimes, it's a great way to just sort of stymie your opponent's clapback. And in this case, what is he holding on to? Looks like a headshot, as well as...
looks possibly like a Heat Seeker. Can't quite make that out. Looks like a Heat Seeker in the hand as well. Nevertheless, we're looking at a 2-card plus Arsenal hand. And hey, you remember that Endless Arrow that I've been holding on to? Here it is, and I'm going to pay with a blue headshot so that I can fire this Endless Arrow for 4. Would you like to get rid of it by donating 2 cards from hand? It might be a good idea to just stop the onslaught of both of these arrows. And we saw Andrew make that sacrifice, giving up 2 cards, 2 awkward cards, and it does look like this was perhaps a bit of an awkward hand. Giving up some of those so that... Max doesn't have any more Endless Arrows, or at least that same one.
You sound like when I contact customer support, and after an already painful experience, they're like, "Hey, would you like to take 5 minutes to answer a survey?" And I don't even close out the window. I throw my whole computer out the window because I do not want them to even give me an opportunity to even let them think that I care.
Tell us how we did on this survey. I've been here for 2 hours listening to the same song
and swan dive off my balcony. Yep, that's what I think.
Now, it is going to connect, and it is going to recur back into the hand. The question becomes, what are we going to put into the arsenal here? Now, we are able to, on our own turn, flip that up and then gain an extra arsenal slot thanks to New Horizon. But which do we choose to throw in? It's most likely going to be that Endless Arrow, but we will see what Andrew chooses to go with. See if he values the other card more.
Maximilian all business now. When I spoke to him this morning, he was all smiles. It was just pure joy. What I like to see also was when I was walking into the booth this morning, all 8 players in the top 8, or I think 7 of them, were all hanging out. They were all chilling. They were all getting ready, talking to each other, just, hyping each other up. Lots of congratulations, lots of pats on the back. It was just all camaraderie, and that is a really great thing to see here. Max was smiling, having a good time, and now, look, you can see he's all business, razor-focused, talking through his turns, both players communicating every single move. There's no margin for error here. There's no room for any mistakes. Loading up that the arrow, what is that over there?
Bolton shot, and most likely this is with +1, so it's going to come for 5, and an on-hit with the guaranteed go again because of the buff. We could on-hit reload here. We may just want to hold on to the card and use Voltaire to reload it, though we have the resources. But nevertheless, this is still pushing 5 and a great turn starter.
Now, the reload has to have an empty arsenal, so there's no opportunity to reload, but you are correct. Oftentimes, even with an empty arsenal, the reload effect... you just ignore it because you want to use the ability of the bow.
That's true. Yes, you are very correct. And here he is going to activate that Voltaire. And look, he has his own Heat Seeker in hand, throwing that across, pushing the old 5 go again here with Heat Seeker. And this is what a lot of players have come to understand about No Fuse Lexi, is that oftentimes we're just looking to play really good arrows that are above rate, that have some detrimental effect that your opponent may want to stop, and just go again and go again.
Brian Gottlieb was pacing around there. He's got red shoes on. Maybe we should change his nickname to Heat Sneaker.
We could try that. I don't think he's going to go for it.
There he is. Look at him.
I'm not sure he's going
walking around with his heat sneakers.
Now he's doing some light karate, staying limber for the next round.
Yeah. Oh, you didn't know the next round is the physical round. It's the octagon round.
They will be commentating while doing massive amounts of cardio.
Yeah, but you're right. The go wide is the strategy off the Lexi. Obviously, it's incredible how this list is essentially supplanted other aggro lists that we've seen in the past, like Phi, like Briar, that were really the mainstays of aggression. This is the premier aggro list, and you have to think a lot of this has to come off the back of the fact that everything you're sending, or most of it, typically has a relevant on hit. There's so many different arrows in the quiver that you could send to really pick the lock of your opponent's defenses in the right scenarios. In this case, well, the Heat Seeker is one thing, but right now it's damage that is the more pressing concern for Andrew, who's clinging at 7. That's still a decent cushion, but 7 can easily evaporate off of a pretty decent turn.
Yeah, this is a fantastic arrow to be throwing at this exact moment when your opponent's at 7, because they're already sort of incentivized to block being at low life totals, but they're very incentivized to block out, because you don't want to give your opponent another arsenal, basically. And here he is going to commit the cards from hand. And if your opponent is at a bit of an awkward hand, they may need those cards just to cobble together a turn. And here you're saying, well, you're not going to have the space or the time, because you're going to have to deal now with that searing shot.
Well, without space and time, what are we? Okay, well, this isn't an existential broadcast here, so we're just going to make sure that we just stick to the plan, which is the fact that Andrew at 2 is really clinging to it. And with a hero that doesn't have much option to block, he's going to start thinking about donating that New Horizon to the cause and that tunic. So once that is gone, it does change the landscape of how you approach, and then you have to be very careful about what you put in Arsenal. If New Horizons is off the board, arsenaling a card becomes a decision that you sincerely have to consider, because if you don't have a way to give that arrow go again, it becomes a one-attack turn, and Lexi does not want that.
Yeah, and all of this has come, this really commanding position for Maximilian has come on the back of that massive turn-to-turn where we saw the same endless arrow fired 3-4 times, something ridiculous, just pushing damage. And it looked like it was going to be an innocuous turn, because it started off, it's just a big endless arrow for 7, no play of the Rain Razors. Andrew's probably fine. It's like, okay, I can take some damage. I can push my own amount of damage back, and we could just keep life parity. And then it became 11. And then it became 15, 16 damage, and all of a sudden that arrow was just being driven into the heart of Andrew.
And you have to go back to that turn and think about, had he played that Rain Razors earlier, that could have changed what the landscape of this particular game looks like, because he's clinging to 2. He only fired that Razors on the 3rd arrow.
That's right.
Had he decided to play it an arrow before, that could have Andrew. I mean, I'm not saying he would have lost the game by now. He would have blocked differently, obviously.
Exactly. That's the biggest and most interesting conversation point, and why I brought that turn back up. Because if you play that Rain Razors on the very first arrow, well, then Andrew, on everything else, on the rest of that turn, is now playing incredibly defensively, may donate the hand, and these life totals would be completely different. But choosing to play it, 1 arrow later, and trying to buy some extra value damage might have gotten him into this position, whereas playing it right on that first arrow, or even before he played an arrow, might have changed the complexion of this game completely. We would be looking at something completely different, and it's a fantastic thought exercise, I guess, to think about the range analysis of that turn.
4, go again, is the order that needs to be filled here. It is the endless arrow. This thing just goes on and on. It is the song that never ends.
Oh, I appreciate that. It goes on and on, my friend.
Yeah, it does. Some people started firing it, not knowing when it stopped, and they'll
continue firing it forever, just because.
All right, we're done. So 4 on the stack here. Endless arrow, a very dangerous thing. We're talking about the most important elements. Again, when you're looking through your opponent's graveyard saying, what do you have left? That's an arrow that you're definitely keeping stock of. But we have seen this arrow more than anything, frankly, and it has been such a pivotal part to the game plan of these Rangers that have just been firing. Their arrows have blotted out the sun.
Yes, they have.
So they'll fight in the shade.
Yes, they will, with lots of shields and like a turtle defense. And
yes.
Great movie as well. But
the sequel, wholesale organic ass.
Not great movie. Very much the opposite. Gerard Butler, fantastic in the first one, not in the second one. He wasn't.
I don't think he was in there.
No, not in the second one.
Smart man too,
and that's the problem. So he's gonna let that connect. I think Max, sitting here with a commanding position in this game, could possibly just use his life as a resource, like he did, and say, you know what, I need my 4-card hand. I don't have an arsenal. I'm a little bit threadbare without the arsenal, just to have to play out whatever's on my 4-card hand. So I'm just gonna take this, hope that there's not too much of a swing back. And maybe I can play this 4-card hand out and maintain control over the proceedings.
So Maximilian here, obviously with Andrew at 2, the goal here is to kill your opponent. Like, that's the obvious thing here. But if Max doesn't win on this turn, what would you say you'd consider a very successful turn sequence here?
You want to rip cards from hand, of course. Like, that is the end goal. Your opponent, Andrew, here is probably going to end on that endless arrow in Arsenal. We can assume that that's a possibility, if not a card pulled from the Heat Seeker that we see there sitting already in Arsenal. So we can assume that our opponent's going to end on an Arsenal, but can we keep them to a 1, maybe a 2 arrow turn while we also present lethal ourselves? And if we can play this turn cycle back and forth with a 10 life lead, we're going to feel a lot more comfortable. But if we have an awkward hand, I don't think in any realm we could possibly have a 0 arrow hand over there on Max's side. But if we have an awkward hand, maybe just blue arrows, maybe like a random Arctic Incarceration or a Winter's Bite that doesn't necessarily do what we want it to do, we may feel a little under the gun here.
I think if Max can come out of his turn on his side with getting the equipment off of Andrew, that is a massive win in itself. That is basically the next major hurdle to just close things out. Hey,
Endless Arrow.
Hey.
It's back again.
Hey, it's a Crippling Crush.
Hey,
that's
back.
A callback.
Guess who's back? Now, here's the thing. I think it is all but guaranteed, unless Max donates the entire hand here to try to stymie this turn. I think it's all but guaranteed that Andrew's going to have to give equipment. And weirdly enough, Max probably would want to give his equipment up on this specific turn if he had the capability. Minus that Tunic, which is going to tick to 3, you would probably consider, with no Arsenal right now, just chucking the New Horizon out there. But a little bit less incentivized to do so with the 2 drill shots that have connected.
Good
and
call.
Here it's just going to cover up 4. This is the final probably time that you could easily cover up a break point using that last little point there. And yeah, he's just considering blocking out completely. I was wondering if there was perhaps something awkward, but he had Remorselesses in hand, double Remorseless. There might have been a window there with this Tunic ticking up to really try to push something extra. But he's stymieing it. He said, you know what? You're going to still be at 2 at the end of this. I'll have another turn. You may still be under the gun. I may be okay.
I just want everybody out there to realize that Steven was actually pointing at the camera.
No, I was pointing at
you.
You.
There's a situation, like, I'm surprised at the blocks over here. Again, there's definitely a method to this this madness, as Max here is in the driver's seat, and he's just going to go ahead with the Codex.
And this is why we saw the blocks as we did, because now we have a Codex. We can just go find the arrow we want. We could pull that Remorseless. If we want to drop the Remorseless in, we can. Our opponent, because we kept them off of an Arsenal, the Codex of Frailty here is going to be able to rip a card from their hand. Yes, they'll get an Arsenal, but now they're on a 3-card hand. Maybe I can present an awkward attack that requires the extra 2 cards. They're going to have to play a 1-card and 1 Arsenal hand, and I have the life lead. There it is, the Remorseless from face up into the Arsenal from the graveyard. And Andrew's going to have to decide here what he's going to do.
Well, and it comes with a way to pay for it because the Tunic is online.
Exactly.
So it's a very efficient play, keeping the life total up and having a very dangerous clapback. Again, that Frailty against Alexi is going to represent a lot of life gain, as it were, a lot of protection, because everything out of Arsenal is now going to have -1. That is one of the, you said codices?
Yes, codices.
Is that correct?
It is actually the plural. Isn't that weird? Codices?
I guess.
I prefer codexes just because it sounds more like it should. But
what do I know?
I think look it up, Chat. I'm not sure. Is it
I don't
codices?
know.
Someone
I'm
tell
not
me.
a doctor,
I could be wrong.
and I don't need to know. But you know who does need to know?
No.
Me neither. That's
okay,
why I'm saying.
I was asking you.
Doesn't matter.
Okay, cool.
Codex of Frailty, bringing back that Remorseless, and the nasty part about the Remorseless here is that even if 1 point leaks through, that is pretty much game over, because that means that Andrew cannot make any actions.
Exactly.
So there's Max is actually playing traps in his list. I don't think there's any D-reacts in Andrew's list, so Remorseless's text about defense reactions not being able to be played.
Well, the Codex doesn't drop it in face up; it drops it in face down. He was just revealing it, what he had chosen out of the graveyard. So that portion of text won't be applicable really at all. But look, I think Andrew's grabbing his own Remorseless, which is a fantastic in-game card. I think he's going to drop that in and then discard a card here. But yeah, he knows this is going to be a 2-card block if I don't donate equipment. And if I do donate equipment, I'm losing the card I just put down there. So I'm losing out on this symmetric effect.
I'm wondering if this is the donation here of the New Horizon.
Exactly. And once that happens, he's losing the card in Arsenal that he just got to go and fetch, so it was essentially a moot point.
Hey, is Codex of Frailty a good card, apparently?
I actually counted this up. This was like 366 points of value. This is actually 1 point of value more than the last Codex we saw. I did the math on this, and I had Brian help me out a lot with it. But yeah, this one pushes a lot of value.
All right, so the 2 block from the New Horizon is definitely an attractive part of the blocking pattern that Andrew's considering over here. Maybe you can toss the hat into the ring, why not, and just soak up some damage. You can still do some nastiness with the cards left over here. Perhaps you load up the Endless Arrow at +1, fire it for 5. Max is likely not going to give it that much respect, given that he's going to have 4 cards and he's going to be looking to close this out.
Well, and this is the beauty of Codex of Frailty, is that he gave him a Frailty token. So anything coming from Arsenal is getting that -1 as well. So things like Bolt and Shot that would normally get go again with the Voltaire Pump now don't, because their attack is not greater than base. So it makes the turn really awkward, especially when you're staring down a Remorseless. Now he's going to choose to block with the Remorseless that was in his hand because he has the one in the arsenal. So his turn is essentially just going to be Remorseless for 4 and not ending on an arsenal, pitching away that Endless Arrow.
Maximilian Klein of Germany methodically approaching these turns, just chipping away, making it very awkward, uncomfortable for Andrew. Andrew, you could see it all over his face. He is not in a happy place right now because he is under the gun. And Max was really putting on the pressure. That is the first Codex that we have seen in this game, and it was a nasty one, as that Codex of Frailty, dropping the Frailty token, is going to really nerf everything that Andrew wants to send his way. Flipping the card with the Lexi ability, we know it was Remorseless. That was what he put in there from the Codex. The question here for Andrew is, what's the follow-up here?
Yeah, most likely this turn is simply Remorseless for 4. It feels really bad, but you do, I feel like, need to put some amount of pressure on your opponent. If you're just choosing, he's going to choose to Arsenal. That's the only other play that you can make. Try to keep value. Try to keep a 6-card hand. You can at the very least play out, maybe a buff plus the, one of the arrows from your arsenal, and try to send it back because your opponent doesn't have an arsenal. But it's definitely an awkward spot, and you're holding on to 6 cards, so you should feel good. But at 2, how can you?
Curious to see where those rain razors are for Andrew, because this is a dangerous time to draw that card.
Very good point.
Blocks for nothing as the same. There it is. Yeah, so rain razors blocks for nothing. We're going to start with the attacks here as well. Art of War, another card that is just a complete brick in your hand that does nothing. It's such a great card to have in your hand when you're on the attack, but I do see a Chilling Ice Vein in hand. That blocks for 3. Looks like there's also a Winter's Bite, but that's a 2 block. So it's not ideal here for Andrew. We're going to see how he approaches this, as Bolt and Shot +1 go again is the first order of business here for Max Klein.
This could be a disastrous turn for Andrew because he may be just priced into donating equipment blocks here, and if he blocks with the New Horizon, he's losing the arsenal. But that may be the only, with 2, it looks like 2 different ice cards, which are generally 2-block cards. He may just be priced into blocking with everything he has available to him and basically just losing all of his cards, both in arsenal and in hand.
I think Andrew may have missed his Tunic trigger on his turn. He opted, I think, to just flip the Remorseless and Arsenal. Did not go ahead and drop the counter on the Tunic. But I would assume that Tunic is probably going to be tossed in the center here to help block. There's another Bolt and Shot. This time it's the blue going +1 for another go again option. And
he may not know this, but this is incredibly awkward because of those exact two cards. And I think he may just be thinking to himself, this is such a tough spot. Where do I block with? What do I choose? Is that a 3 of a kind in hand? Maybe he's banking on possibly just playing out 3 of a kind? No, it could just be another, like a drill shot or something, so that he can block 3 here. No, it was a 3 of a kind. So yeah, he has 3 2-blocks in hand, and now all that information is face up and known. Yeah, he may just be stuck here.
Well, there is an option. I didn't catch a glimpse of what those ice cards were. I think was it Winter's Bite or Arctic
I think they were
Incarceration?
both Winter's Bites, yes.
Okay, so in that case, again, when you kind of go ahead and make your commitment to or you start to think about your blocks and you put the cards down, even though you haven't committed to the block, you are giving some information away to your opponent. So Max Klein has all the info now.
Now, by blocking both of these out, especially the second one, you're denying the reload effect here. So that arrow possibly in hand for Max is basically stuck there. So you are able to get out of this turn unscathed, but you're essentially just having to play the 2-card blue hand that you have, which both being decent cards for disruption, maybe able to get you kind of some room, and you do have the arrows in the hand, so he may be able to get out of this turn and swing a little tempo back off of the back of donating the equipment plus the 3 of a kind.
Andrew had the alternative route here to perhaps block with one of the ice 2 blocks, keep the 3 of a kind, maybe pitch into the 3 of a kind and hope that you find some magic there. But if you don't have go again the natural way, then you can't play cards in hand. So I think Andrew says, I'm just going to get rid of this. I'm going to play the Winter's Bite. If by chance Max gets all red cards, he can just double Winter's Bite and hopefully get 2 cards out of Max's hand and maybe survive another turn. But he is hanging by a thread at 1 life.
Yeah, and this is most likely the play where he's going to start with a Winter's Bite and then maybe fire that Remorseless. And we know the other face-down card is Endless Arrow, so no real way of giving go again or loading arrows here. And so we're just kind of face up with playing a Winter's Bite, sending over the Remorseless, unless we want to do some really, crafty things with maybe triggering the quiver of Rustling Leaves, but I don't think that's perhaps the time for it. Neither of these quivers necessarily been used currently. Deciding how we're going to deal with this Winter's Bite, and it's going to be, he did side in the Frailty Traps, and when your opponent is at 1, there can be some really interesting stymies and stops that you can make with traps. You're obviously not playing Riptide, which is depressing because when you're at 1 and you're playing against a Riptide, you're basically dead to any trap, but you can definitely get some trap action going in Lexi as well.
Trap action, also what I got to witness the morning at the gym with Brendan Patrick. Some good trap action going on there, but ultimately here, so this is precisely the double Winter's Bite Andrew potentially was hoping for, which was play the first one. If you're caught with all reds, I'm getting 2 cards out of you, so that's a 1-for-1 trade each time. So Andrew has has a breath of life in him here as he's basically allowing himself to not just buy 2 cards out of Max's hand, but also allow a little bit of pressure here.
Yep, and here he's taking 3 cards. Oh, look, he drew into 2 of them on the same turn, a quad red hand most likely, and that's a great way to swing back. Choosing to double Winter's Bite, pegging your opponent on a red hand means that you're taking 3 cards from hand, and that is going to connect for some damage and recur back. No, I think maybe he blocked it all out because of the Frailty token. Nope, it is recurred.
It is recurred.
And, the Frailty was from the previous turn.
And good on Max there saying, hey, no, you get that card back there. Good sportsmanship on both sides, as Andrew thought that it was going to go into the graveyard. But nope, it's back to hand, my friend. So Max Klein back on the gun here, but he's just going to go ahead and load another one into the arsenal and say, all right, buddy, you've got a chance here. Let's see what you can do. Good on Andrew Rothermel here, who has done an incredible job of staying alive, and not just alive, but relevant. It has been an incredible just resilience on his side.
Now, yes, he's played incredibly well to this point. He knows he's at the life deficit, and every point matters. He's managed to keep his block on New Horizon alive as well. It's also kept his chances of double arrow reloads or loading up, I should say, into the arsenal alive. And now here he is with a handful of arrows, firing out a Heat Seeker, threatening to go wide and maybe just steal this game.
Andrew doing his best here. He really weathered a storm, clinging to life with 1 point left, as Max Klein at 11 has really just dictated the tempo of this game. And a lot of the heavy lifting was done on that 4 endless arrow swing early on in the game, where a lot of that equipment was broken in order to connect for just massive amounts of damage. This game is approaching the 50-minute mark. This is a top 8 match. There are no time limits, ladies and gentlemen, so we're going to let the players just make sure that they take their time, play cleanly. As you can see, they are razor-focused. Max Klein going down to 6 now, and the story ain't over here because another endless arrow has appeared.
Yeah, this is going to be loaded with Voltaire, give and go again, so we are threatening lethal on this turn, and Max has to look at his 1 arsenal and his 4 cards and say, how can I maybe string together 2 arrows, maybe block with a couple of cards from hand and take all the cards I can from Andrew, or maybe just I have to just commit to blocking out here.
Max thinking about the response here. We see a Winter's Bite in his hand. I believe another Codex. I could be wrong. I thought I caught a glimpse of a Codex in hand here, but that is a 2 block that he's got going on here. You got to think that at a certain point you have to stuff this endless arrow.
Well, so here's the interesting part. If you double block this endless arrow, the next thing that's happening is Remorseless coming from the arsenal, and if that on hit goes through, and you have stuffed the endless arrow, if the on hit goes through because maybe you don't commit cards to block it, if you play anything, you're dead.
Oh my goodness!
And so here, I think he's committing to blocking the Remorseless, which most likely is going to be coming next after we recur the endless arrow. Yet there's the Remorseless, and this is the card you have to block, because if this on hit goes through, 2 actions and you're dead. And so he's going to commit the blocks there so that he doesn't have to worry about taking damage with the Remorseless on hit. And that's going to be the turn. He's kept a 2-card hand. He has his arsenal. This is down to the wire, and it may just end on the back of someone playing, like a Rain Razors or an Art of War.
We have just passed the 15
Codex.
Well, we have just passed the 15-minute mark, and nobody has played a 3 of a kind.
That is accurate. That is quite accurate. The power cards have not shown up necessarily outside of that 1 Codex, and maybe we see one of these players try to close the game out with one of those.
Andrew just desperate to find that Rain Razors to just close things out. A Winter's Bite is going to go ahead and tax a card out of Andrew's hand here. Both players really just, it's razor-thin margins here. You cannot let anything pass through, and both players are absolutely respecting the Rain Razors.
The MVP card thus far in this matchup, and it may not win the game for either player, but has truly been Winter's Bite. The only reason the life totals are at this point is because Andrew was able to play 2 Winter's Bites, rip 2 cards, and then follow it up with an arrow, while Max had a 11 life lead. That's the only reason this game is this close. And here, maybe trying to do a little similar trick is Max playing his own Winter's Bite.
Well, think about it this way. It wasn't just the fact that the double Winter's Bite connected for 2 cards. It was that Max knew that there were 2 Winter's Bites. He just drew into an all-red hand, and that is the devastating. If Max had a blue there or a yellow, and knowing that there were 2 Winter's Bites, he would have just said, all right, I will pitch a yellow, and I'll float the other one. I'll maintain the card. He just got gooned off of an all-red hand, and Andrew found that little avenue to take advantage, and it's been all Andrew ever since. The landscape of this game has dramatically shifted towards Andrew's side of the board here, because keep in mind, even though Max was really in the driver's seat for so long, he is basically out of blocking equipment, and Andrew can still lean on that New Horizons if he needs it.
That's right. And look, there's another Winter's Bite down in the arsenal. I believe that's a red Winter's Bite. It looks like.
Who plays red Winter's Bite? He plays yellows too. Who is this guy?
I think we saw a yellow earlier, perhaps. Nevertheless, this is a Winter's Bite sitting in the arsenal for Andrew, so he's perhaps banking on the play of being able to jam that out there.
I'm gonna go to the school of Stephen J. Armada. It's not Winter's Bites. It's Winter's Bitices.
Sure. Yeah. We can look that up. Let me search that on this computer that they have so graciously put in front of me.
Yeah, use the internet machine and look up that knowledge.
Bitices. Oh, I do not put that into Google image search. I do not want to
You
find
never know,
out.
man. You never know.
Rolling the dice.
The worst thing I ever did was look up an Overwatch GIF on Google. Don't want to do that one either.
Okay, no, that does not sound like
it doesn't take too much scrolling to find.
That is not wise. That is not wise. Nevertheless, here we are paying the tax with a yellow Bolton shot and a premeditate from Arsenal. Using the Tunic resource, and that's a great use of the resource to load perhaps the only arrow we have. Oh, and a searing shot.
Nasty one again. The premeditate, one of the cards from Outsiders, alongside other cards like. Oh, hey, we have seen plenty of 3 of a kinds. I don't know what you're talking about. They're just 2 block cards. They're terrible.
My goodness.
They're
He's
terrible.
Gonna commit the entire thing to block, and now he's literally just going to have to play out that Winter's Bite plus whatever the Arsenal card is, most likely an arrow if it's a 0 cost.
That's a Yellow's Winter's Bite as well. That's a good way to sort of open up the arsenal as well if you want to load up.
I think that's a red. I think he's playing the Rainbow Winter's Bite, the MVP of the deck.
It is
as
red.
You can see, he's going to make him get rid of a blue or discard a card.
Go to your LGS, buy every Winter's Bitices that you find. A 3 spot here. It's got to be paid for or discarded to. That is also an option here.
And that may be what we see here. If we want to keep the blue in hand, we just toss a card.
I want to just take note to Andrew's body language just not too long ago. You can see it right now. He is just absolutely beside himself in terms of it's just like, this is an incredible game. This is such a slugfest. It's so grindy, but he is also just kind of surprised. He's like, how am I still in this? This is incredible. Both players are really clinging to this game.
His mind must be racing. And look, he's going to get to recur off of a 0 card hand. He took 2 cards out of Max's hand and put him at life parity with himself. And I dare say he has the advantage. He has the equipment block. He has a 4-card plus Arsenal Endless Arrow to Max's 2-card hand. But just kidding. It's not a 2-card hand. It ended up being effectively a 5-card hand or 4-card hand, however you want to see it. But does he draw arrows?
Now, Andrew Rothermel, who has done an incredible job just equalizing this game, he is the number 1 seed. So let's be real here. He is the top dog at the tournament here, but this is the first actual play of 3 of a kind. It has taken 55 minutes, and it is a 1-1 game. So
both of these players pushed to the absolute limit. There is no other recourse except death.
Yeah.
And
so
let's see if he drew into the arrows.
It's a 1-1 game. If this were a soccer match, we'd call this a barn burner.
Okay, yeah, that's true. I would call this a barn burner in and of itself.
3 of a kind. Now, the 3 of a kind, you pay 1, draw 3. The downside to an otherwise awesome ability is the fact that, well, you can only play out of hand. So what does this limit you from? It limits you from, let's say, the Winter's Bites. It limits you from the Rain Razors, Art of Wars, things like that. But, hey, let's start off with a Bolt and Shot 3 go again. Definitely digestible. We're going to throw an Ice Vein in front of us. 3 block meets 3 block, and there's no scare of a Rain Razors from hand here because of 3 of a kind.
No. Wow, this is such an... There's the Rain... He did draw the Rain Razors, which wasn't going to do him any good, but he is going to force the donation of cards. And, hey, another one of those 3 of kinds used to block, but at this point, you just need to stay alive because every arrow has on hit, win the game.
I was going to mention at the 30-minute mark of saying, hey, we're getting about 33% of the match we just saw earlier, like that long match. But we are approaching an hour for this incredible matchup between 2 skilled archers. It is Hawkeye versus Legolas here, and it is definitely Endless Arrow that we have seen for the 468th time.
I wish I had been tallying how many endless arrows we saw. Someone in chat, maybe, if they're interested, could go back and count all the endless arrows. We could have like a nice little running count. That would be fantastic to know. We've definitely seen maybe upwards of 20 endless arrows at this point.
Well, it's not called limited amount of arrows.
That's true. It's not X amount of arrows. This thing is endless. He's got to give him 2 cards here because if he doesn't, he dies. So 2 cards gonna be donated here.
Well, the match might be endless. Well, there goes that whole thing.
The match is not endless.
Rewind,
it
never
will
happened.
End at some point, unless both players run out of arrows, and then they have to throw their quivers at each other.
It's done. It's done. I had a good one too.
Oh, well, next time.
I was gonna say the endless. I messed it up again.
What were you gonna say?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's.
There's so much
minutes.
Star Wars and Star Trek in my head. It's hard to parse things out. Ultimately, though, it's a 1-1 game. We're approaching the hour mark here as both players have really gone through the trenches here. That's another breakpoint 5, 2-card block potentially. Looking at what is in Andrew Rothermel's hand now. A lot of those Winter's Bites. He said that he's loading up a lot of that card in his deck. The downside to that is they are 2 blocks, so it can be dangerous when you want to be that aggressive. You are not blocking as well. That's a Command and Conquer and an Arctic Incarceration that covers that card up for 5. Both players are also just waiting for that Rain Razors to potentially close things out.
And weirdly enough, Andrew also hasn't seen a single Codex of Frailty this entire game as well. And oh my god, there's the Rain Razors in the arsenal. He's going to be able to load an arrow off Voltaire. He's going to throw in Heat Seeker, and this is going to push massive damage here.
Now, this is dangerous here because what this means is that it's not just the threat, it's not just the actual Rain Razor, it's the threat of it. So Maximilian has to respect it every single time now.
Oh my god, this is a 3-card block, and it's off of the back of the turn 0 counter being placed on the Tunic, not able to chuck it in front of this exact arrow, which is pushing, I believe, 7 damage after the Rain Razor's play. So this, I think this is a 7 damage arrow. He should have given, maybe it's 8. He should have given +1. No, scratch that. I think it's 6. Yeah, it's pushing 8 damage on the face of it. So this is a 3-card block every which way you slice it.
6 damage. Anything that leaks through is a ticket to the next round. Andrew Rothermel, your number 1 seed. It's a Lexi Livewire showdown here. Max Klein, that jovial smile he had this morning has easily erased off his face because he is staring down a hand here and trying to parse out a turn that he could potentially attack back with. There's no more equipment on his side that is going to do anything but just look pretty, as on Andrew's side of the board, well, you still got a New Horizon you could lean on to close out a break point here. 6 damage is staring Max down, and he is agonizing over this block. That's a Rain Razors in his hand. That blocks for 0, I think.
Oh, yeah, his only recourse here would be to donate 3 cards and have a 0-cost arrow that could load with Voltaire off the Tunic resource. But, yeah, this is going to be a threat for 8 with the Rain Razors, and we can assume, and the handshake. So that closes the game out. Wow! Max had